Respected Professor Maitri Chaudhary, the President of Indian Sociological Society, distinguished Speaker of the today talk, Professor Purendra Prasad, University of Hyderabad, dear Professor Sampathkumar, co-convener of RC03, my friends and colleagues. Good morning. It gives me immense pleasure in welcoming and inviting you all for this online special lecture on the topic, Why Study Wealth Elites in India? A sociological perspective by the eminent speaker, Professor Purendra Prasad. For conducting online lectures, I'm happy to share that RC03 has already conducted 2 online lectures. One is Dhanagara Memorial Lecture and a special lecture during 26th All India Sociological Conference organized by University of Mumbai during pandemic in 2021. This topic, one is about the media, elitism and legitimization crisis, the case of nascent Indian democracy by Professor Vinay Kumar Patnaik, IIT Kanpur, and the understanding of social embeddedness, the case of Indian workers by Ernesto Noronha, IIM Ahmedabad. These 2 lectures were already organized with the help and support of Professor B.B. Mohanty and Tata Palta Singh, the advisory committee members of RC03. Coming into the current topic, and we know that the Indian economy or the economy of any country, immediately it leads to the wealth or income inequality. And we know that there are a lot of writings through that. Very minimal. If you take a 0.01% of the population, they earn 10% of the national income. Likewise, we get often the reading from the newspaper. And also, we have a popular say, the richer become richer and the poor get poor. And also, we, the sociologists, we are also very much concerned with the higher economic growth, reduction of inequality, and the improvement of the human development and poverty reduction program. So in this context, the presented topic, which is very much relevant today, and coming into the topic, Professor Purendra Prasad has given an abstract of his topic. Wealth cannot be seen just as a commodity, but also to be understood in terms of relations that are all producers and the way it is structured by caste, gender, nation, and global networks. So it produces various meanings and networks in different social and political contexts. By bringing the historical sociology and political economy perspective together, the present talk explains how wealth elites shape economic policy which create inequalities in India. In elaborating the sociology of wealth, this talk provides insight into the questions such as who are the wealthy Indians? How do they come to acquire such a vast amounts of wealth? What kinds of wealth do they own? What kinds of social backgrounds do they come from? What is the nature of the growing social and economic ethnic diversity? And what are the conceptual and methodological challenges of study wealth in India? So with this, I would like to say a brief bio of Professor Purendra Prasad. Professor Purendra Prasad is presently a professor of sociology at the University of Hyderabad. He has previously worked at Center for Social Studies, Surat, and Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. His research interests encompass critical agrarian studies, environmental studies, the political economy of health and development and urban studies. His recent work investigates wealth accumulation and business elites in India as a part of the broader research project on wealth equalities in South Africa, Brazil, and India. Professor Purendra Prasad has co-edited the book Equity and Access, a healthcare studies in India by Oxford University Press in 2018. He is an academic and ethical advisory boards of various universities and institutions of India. With these few words, I wholeheartedly, on behalf of RC03 and myself, we wholeheartedly invite Professor Maitri Chaudhary, the President, Indian Sociological Society, Professor Purendra Prasad, to deliberate this event. Before Professor Purendra Prasad deliver the special address, I request Professor Maitri Chaudhary to say a few words on the initiatives of online talk of all the RCs of Indian Sociological Society. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Maruthakutti. Thank you for initiating. Thank you, Dr. Sampath, for initiating the RC03, because this is the kind of support one needs for it to function. I was wondering, a lot of young people felt that the research committees are a very good space to share their research interests, but since it gets confined to usually the annual conference, the scope becomes a little limited. Whereas if we have online lectures throughout the year at one's convenience, then they would be involved in the theme of the research committee and be able to share scholarly deliberations on the same. So that was the idea. We are also hoping to activate the website. So we are recording all the talks, and after some minor editing for sound, etc., we are going to upload it. Many of the talks which have started are already uploaded. To the young scholars who are attending this conference, attending this talk, a warm-hearted welcome. Please do share with your colleagues, students, and friends the new initiative of RC online lectures. Do tell them to follow ISS on Facebook, on Twitter, on Insta, because we are trying to reach out to younger people who are more familiar with this new social media. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Purendra, for agreeing so readily to give this talk. And we are hoping to have a whole long series. Thank you again, RC03. Thank you.
I request Professor Purendra Prasad to deliver the talk.
All right. Let me first of all thank the organizers, Professor Maruthakutti, convener, and Professor Sampathkumar, co-convener of the RC3, Economy and Society of Indian Sociological Society. I'm glad that ISS is organizing these conversations and discussions, spread across the year. And all credit goes to the office bearers of ISS, particularly Professor Maitri Chaudhary and her team, and also the RC conveners. I thought of actually, talking about this theme, why study wealth elites in India? And why would it be of interest to sociologists? Primarily, I thought there is a lot of discussion already going around in academic circles, policy circles, and among the political parties campaigning during elections. Interestingly, these political parties are also talking today about wealth redistribution as one of the major agendas, pointing out how inequalities are phenomenally rising in the past few decades. The opposition parties are also raising these questions about the current regime of contributing to the concentration of wealth in the hands of a minuscule proportion of super rich in the country. There is generally a discussion about electoral bonds, about corruption, about black money, about demonetization, crony capitalism, inequalities, wealth elites, etc. So this is the background with which I thought I would want to provoke everyone here to think about these themes from a sociological perspective. Now, coming to these wealth inequalities or wealth studies, first we should actually also locate it in terms of the existing kind of literature. Despite India's rapid economic growth in the post-90s, it has the largest number of poor in the world today, higher than that of the sub-Saharan Africa, so to say. So in terms of Human Development Index, India remains among the lowest. In fact, it's below 125. However, India's super rich have been, doing spectacularly well in the last few decades. To bring in, I think, a lot of discussion, Thomas Piketty and Lucas Chancel, in their world inequality reports, showed that wealth of the billionaires rose by more than $4 trillion during the 18 months of COVID-19, while 100 million more people joined the ranks of poverty during the same period. In fact, commenting on India, they concluded saying that India has moved from British Raj to billionaire Raj with the available data that they analyzed during 1920 to 2020, that is over 100 years. So, in a sense, if you look at the data sources that are available, such as Hurun Rich List or Forbes India, all of these data sources indicate that India has 215 billionaires, and India is the third biggest billionaire producing nation in the world. The US actually currently leads with 32% of the wealth contribution, followed by China, which is contributing about 27%, and India contributes to about 7% of the billionaires in the world. Okay. In fact, these 36 billionaires from US, 30 billionaires from China, and 5 billionaires from India are among the world's top 100 billionaires, even while the number of precariat has been rapidly growing after the COVID pandemic. Now, the question arises, why is it that sociologists are interested, and why is it that sociologists actually are not investigating adequately about wealth and wealthy elites? Conceptually speaking, social science or project of sociology is all about pursuing this egalitarian society where we constantly invoke, these terms: inclusive, democratic, just society. However, when it comes to engaging with specific themes, sociological research usually prioritizes studying the poor, class inequalities, regional imbalances, caste and gender discrimination, etc., but not about the wealthy. This is primarily because of their ethical moral position about social justice, equality, and so on and so forth, because we always prioritize studying the poor, studying the middle classes, studying the inequality is much more significant than other dimensions. While is it also primarily because of our disciplinary moorings? Is it that one could explain within sociology, if one goes with Weberian perspective, wealth accumulation by itself is not immoral if it is pursued through legal or the rule book? So is that something that also actually influences our own perspectives, or should we also look at conflict perspectives, say especially Marxian perspective, which sees wealth accumulation process in terms of exploitation, cheating or theft of surplus value, robbery, etc., primarily from the producers or workers' perspective? While both Weberian and Marxian perspectives have diametrically opposite kind of things on wealth accumulation, but both these perspectives do not actually, engage or haven't been actually studying adequately the rich or the super rich, and empirical work, of course, is much, much scanty. So that's where I'm trying to raise this question, saying why is it so, and why should we study? Generally speaking, sociological inquiry of inequality goes up only up to middle level. and hence most of the literature is on middle classes or in terms of studying the poor or the ultra poor. So given some of these dimensions, I am now trying to come back to this saying that while we recognize that studying the rich actually is important, but it does pose a lot of methodological challenges. While it is relatively easy to investigate about the non-rich in terms of their income, expenditure, everyday transactions, the cost dimensions, what kind of markets do they access, what kind of flows of capital, etc. Because they are willing to share, they are actually accessible, and also because of their communitarian boundaries, whether we talk in terms of village community or urban neighborhoods or in terms of caste associations. So we do have certain kind of a methodological kind of a straight jacket that is available, whereas it is extremely difficult and challenging for researchers to collect data from this wealthy or the ultra rich. So you need to actually have very different methodological tools and strategies in order to gain access to the wealthy respondents. You obviously cannot replicate the same methods that we use in investigating, whether it is urban or rural or industry or environment. So you need actually a different kind of a tools and methodology. So that's the first thing that I wanted to place before you all here. And now second one is, what entails studying wealthy or the ultra rich? What do we learn? What do we know if we actually, move from above rather than from below? Studying the rich can tell us about the processes of wealth creation, which in turn tells us about how exclusion takes place, what are the social and political networks that play a very crucial role in terms of these state business nexus, or in terms of how these diversification in terms of their business networks actually happens. All these things help us also understand economic and social inequalities. So if we want to understand, these inequalities, we also need to understand, the processes from above. In brief, studying this ultra rich would help us understand the notions of equity, social justice, inclusive societies, etc. Within social sciences, it is not, more than other social science, economists actually have been more engaged in terms of wealth studies and wealth inequalities. Okay. And what economists do is that they usually, come out with the law based on large number of data sets, official data sources, and the numbers. Usually they tell us about the quantum of wealth, particularly top 1 percentile or list of top billionaires, sectoral distribution of wealth, the spatial dimensions, etc. However, the point is to go beyond these statistics and numbers. One needs to explore multiple sources, different variables, and different lens that can actually tell us, the underlying phenomena rather than what is manifest and what actually hides the wealth processes. So while we also know that India is a regionally very diverse country, so starting point obviously should be to understand how this kind of a churning takes place both in terms of production of wealth and expansion of wealth, primarily because wealth needs also to be seen more in terms of a relationship. It should not be seen simply as a capital, because it produces various meanings in different historical and regional contexts. And how do these elites actually reproduce themselves? How do social and political networks contribute to diversification of wealth? And so on and so forth. And therefore, I argue that it is possible to get fascinating insights from political economy of wealth inequality. And if one investigates the structural dimensions, say how accumulation is going on from one generation to another generation, and if you bring in the regional, the caste, the gender and other dimensions, we would have the layered kind of a approach to understand the deeper kind of intricacies of wealth creation processes. And that's where sociologists will be able to explain below the radar mechanisms using both qualitative, quantitative, and triangulation kind of methods. For example, rumors and gossip can be good entry points in terms of studying the rich. Usually, when we talk about the rich, there are a lot of these rumors or gossip goes on, and we need to actually take them as entry points, clues to pursue them, the leads, then find out how do we access actually those who are proxy to wealthy elites, or those who can actually tell us about wealthy elites, because we may not be able to directly interact and investigate with the wealthy elites. So there are different ways through which we need to actually create these pathways and access. To just give you an example, one of the top bureaucrats in Hyderabad had conducted his daughter's wedding in Falaknama Palace. Okay, and it's a very extravagant kind of a wedding that took place, where all the newspapers covered about this particular bureaucrat's daughter's wedding. Once you scratch the below the surface, then you get to know that he is the key person who is actually managing the irrigation project, a large irrigation project in Telangana. And the company which has been given contract in this irrigation project picked up the wedding bills. And subsequently, when you look recently, electoral bonds, and this is the same company which actually provided a lot of funding to the ruling party as well as the opposition party. So you get actually a lot of these sequence when you follow it up in terms of some of these leads and some of these gossip and other things. So the point that I'm trying to talk about is that it is sociologists who can explain the social and political processes behind the economic kind of dimensions and wealth accumulation processes. So this is where I was just trying to say that both at methodological and in terms of our own agendas, I think we need to think through these more carefully, and it actually has potential to explain a lot of things that we have been engaged in terms of inequalities or exclusions or other dimensions. So what I will now do is that I'll now share some insights from our own research on wealth elites in Hyderabad city that we have conducted as part of the larger project on wealth inequalities in India, Brazil, and South Africa. So while it's not possible to actually go on with a lot of details, but I have actually picked up few variables where I could actually present so that I think that can generate some discussion. Okay. The first thing that I was trying to look at is in terms of close nexus between state and the business. Okay. There has been an emergence of state business nexus that aids the wealth creation of certain groups and individuals who maintain close ties with the state at various scales. And they have mostly come from privileged caste backgrounds, elite class status, although there has been an expansion of elites with the entry of agrarian rich who moved into urban areas. So this new consolidation of wealth was largely urban-centric, concentrated in the greater city regions of Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, Kolkata. But unless we understand the city regions, we will not be able to understand the wealth in these cities. So when we looked at Hyderabad city region, a lot of wealth that was generated, or surplus that came from the green revolution in coastal region of Andhra Pradesh was reinvested into several sectors in terms of health, education, in terms of pharmaceutical industry, in power, in mining, and subsequently how these sectors and these elites who have actually come from the agrarian backgrounds and upper caste backgrounds were also trying to control the state power and the economic power in both these regions. So that's what we try to do is we try to go back to the regions where these these industries or these manufacturing sites are located, and try to understand those processes, and also added certain historical kind of trajectories of region to be able to explain the emergence of, say, Reddys in one particular region, or Kammas in some other region, or Baniya, Vaishya caste in some other region. So what actually led to the emergence of certain kind of caste capital, and how this caste capital actually had nexus with the state, and what are those processes that led to these accumulation dynamics. Okay, so in explaining some of these things, I think Barbara Harris White, who actually wrote this brilliant piece, India Socially Regulated Economy. So she actually argues that in the absence of state regulation, because India is largely informal economy, so she says that social institutions such as caste, class, gender, kinship, take precedence in governing the economic activities. Discussing the role of social institutions in regulating the economy, Barbara Harris White highlights the importance of caste and the dual role that these caste associations actually play a role. Okay. So she says that firstly, they serve as institutions that regulate the economic conduct of members within each caste group. Secondly, they act as intermediaries in the political relationship between the communities and the state. And third one, she also says that this role resembles that of non-class mediators of class interests. Okay, so in a way, she argues that it would be inaccurate to label them as entirely non-class, since class dynamics are indeed present within caste, as well as significantly influence the working of that particular kind of a capital, the way it plays out in different regions. Therefore, she says that the social character of the economy and the class interests that these castes come to represent is very important. So what prevails in business sector are informal processes of caste rather than formal processes. Okay, so this is where one could actually see how India is largely governed by these social institutions, particularly in terms of primordial kind of social relations and informal kind of networks. Okay, so caste needs to be seen both as a structure of disadvantage and also as a structure of privilege for some. And therefore, these economic relations, how they are socially embedded, is something that we can actually track when you go to understand, the underlying processes. Okay. Similarly, I think, Pranab Bardhan, who has been actually extensively writing on development, India's development, he also argues that, the stronger kind of a relationship between the business and politics. Okay. So he argues that, when you talk about capital or wealth, he says that how do certain kind of classes actually become privileged? Okay. How do regional politics play a significant role? And so he brings in, very interestingly, the relevance of contemporary agrarian question to understand the privilege, to understand the role of regional politics, because he says that regional and sub-regional capitalism cannot be understood without seriously engaging with the agrarian question. Okay. That's why he actually says the contestation between local and global capital is, very important for us to understand the nature of state. And this capital actually has lost competitive advantage with the rules-based taxation post-demonetization and GST reforms. And this is where Harish Damodaran and others also try to argue that how the small capital has lost competitive advantage in the post-demonetization phase. So in a sense, the emergence of Kammas and Reddys in Hyderabad city region as a powerful kind of a capitalist class within the political economy of Andhra Pradesh can be, understood if we are able to investigate, the provincial dimensions of the capital and the capitalist kind of accumulation processes. Okay. So we need actually to investigate both the elites and non-elites within a region, what kind of competition actually ensues at different points of time with the change of political regime, how these kind of networks actually also move differently. Okay, so I think in Andhra context, we always see that the regional political parties, I think Telugu Desam Party has one particular kind of dominance in certain sectors. So it is Kama caste community networks actually in some sectors, while the Congress or the YSRCP today has the Reddy kind of capital has dominance in some other sectors. So how these two sectors actually are controlled, regulated from time to time, and what kind of dynamics actually operate in these business state nexus, caste and the state nexus. I think these are all things we sociologists actually have a very significant role in explaining the processes. In fact, these social networks produce highly efficient business relations. Okay, and these efficient business relations actually transform, some of them being local to regional to global capitalist classes. I think one of the best examples that one of our PhD students also has done work on GMR in North Coastal Andhra, where from being a local and regional capitalist, I think he has grown to be a global capitalist, where now investing in infrastructure in different countries and across the India airports and other things. He comes from a small town of 40,000 population to grow into a huge kind of a global capitalist. So these are the dynamics that, studying these wealth elites, and particularly in terms of below the radar kind of processes, would tell us much more than simply economists actually telling us about the top 1 percentile contributing to this kind of wealth or income. and below 50% actually has this proportion. I think we need to move beyond those kind of economic and statistical kind of dimension. So this is one thing that one could actually bring in. And now I think, also to investigate, while caste and community obviously matter in the reproduction of big wealth, we also are able to see a lot of caste diversity, the rise of intermediary caste, the rise of OBCs. In some states and some regions, some of these OBCs actually also have become the big wealth owners. Okay, so now how did these OBC communities actually emerge as big wealth owners, and what kind of background and processes that actually led to the establishment of these set of things? Similarly, how are these scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and other kind of entrepreneurs excluded both from the state and the market kind of institutional processes, is something that's again fascinating. One, if looks at, today we have Dalit Chamber of Commerce and other kind of policy oriented initiatives. So we can also look at, what are those exclusions and how these exclusions actually are happening. Okay. So this is where, the sociologist Mike Savage, the British sociologist, he argues that a lot of continuity need to be seen with the past. So he actually says that power of the past defines the present in many ways. That's something that we can relate it very clearly in the Indian context. If you look at, say, why is it that upper castes actually are the land owners or asset owners and resource owners, how these privileges actually help reproduce themselves or contribute to favorable positioning of these caste communities. I think what Max Savage is trying to argue, that it is the power of the past that defines the present in many ways. Historically, we need to go back and understand, in Hyderabad city, for instance, I think if you look at the Nizam state, how Nizam actually, invited a lot of these, business communities from Bombay, the Kayas and, the Agarwals and the Parsis and Marwadis, a lot of their kind of, entrenchment in Hyderabad city. So we need to go back and trace historically how Hyderabad city as a region actually emerged. What are the different kind of caste and religious and other communities actually contributed to the emergence of these wealth dynamics? And also one could actually understand the falling icons or the falling wealth. For example, in Hyderabad city, the Muslim kind of elites and their own wealth actually has drastically, fallen at different points in time. And it has been replaced by new kind of caste communities that emerged in the post-Green Revolution phase. So how do you understand those dynamics between, these upper caste Hindu communities and the falling of these Muslim elites, and how sociologists actually can carefully track both from the historical and contemporary kind of context is something that one could actually look at. So in many ways, I think, we need to understand these changing dynamics across the caste, across the regions, across the ethnic groups. Okay. And this is where recently Wealth Inequality Report in 2022, okay, it talks about the affluent elite. Okay, says that India is one of the most unequal countries in the world, primarily because of the affluent elites. The affluent elite, it explains, saying that they actually benefit both from, the inherited wealth as well as inherited caste status. Okay, so these dominant caste groups have made, ground in combining their political and political access and clout to new economic opportunities and are increasingly becoming new kind of entrepreneurs, and they actually decide our political systems and the political trajectories. Okay, so this is one other dimension that one could actually look at, in terms of bringing in these concepts of affluent elite and what Shannon and Barbara Harris and others talk about upward classes. So the two of these things, on the one hand, there is this affluent elite which is gaining from both the inherited wealth and inherited caste status, while there is a huge kind of exclusion that happens, and both in the rural and urban context, and how these upward classes or dangerous classes, as literature also talks about, emerges. So these are the some of the dynamics that one needs to actually understand, and to just to look at other processes in Hyderabad city region, apart from the historical kind of accounts that we try to bring in. The other dimension that we also try to look at is sectorally how they have been diversifying themselves. Okay. For instance, I think, wealth actually is not only in terms of what is fixed asset and properties. Obviously, it's actually a lot of flows. Okay. So when you look at wealth, a lot of it is what is disclosed, what is actually, revealed in some of these websites in terms of their annual reports and other things. But there's a lot of undisclosed wealth. Okay. And that undisclosed wealth actually tells us much larger story than what is, disclosed wealth. So to just give you one example of that, what we found was that in every sector, whether it is power, mining, or in terms of pharmaceutical industry, the accumulation processes where they have reinvested in the real estate, which is something that never actually figures in their official kind of validation in any things. Okay. Similarly, the real estate kind of speculative kind of money that is invested in terms of proxies. Okay. So that plays a very important role. So how do we actually investigate wealth that actually is, maintained through these proxies? While it is, very challenging for us, but there are ways and means actually to investigate, these dynamics as well. And when it comes to the family business and business families, okay, there is a lot of, dynamics where, some sectors where there is monopoly of certain families, businesses, which actually still control. But today also you have, a lot of diversification that is taking place in terms of different sectors that they are also able to move. So that's another kind of a theme. The family business and business families is another kind of a theme that we try to look at. And in terms of some of these gender dimensions, interestingly, in US and China, there are much more women entrepreneurs compared to India. And that has also, very different kind of processes that we need to understand. What we actually try to look at in terms of whatever that is available from the data sources, because it is, primarily these actually there is a mandate from these, the registered companies that they need to have women members as a mandatory kind of a provision, they usually actually co-opt their own family members or their own kind of networks into these companies. But in everyday kind of a functioning, there is no role for any of these women members in decision making. And second, the accumulation process also is quite evident with the marriage and the extending their kinship. So it's largely, trying to, multiply wealth. Marriage becomes one of the important kind of a, variable for a lot of them to actually, enter into these social relationships to be able to, accumulate wealth. So that's the other dimension in terms of the caste. So when we looked at the caste, when we looked at the gender dimensions, when we looked at the region, okay, it also was very evident that there is high concentration and accumulation of wealth in, certain regions. For example, huge concentration of wealth in coastal Andhra. Within coastal Andhra, certain kinds of towns, okay, and you can actually trace some of these things to certain caste communities. So the regional dynamics also tells us that spatial and temporal kind of distribution of wealth and how these processes actually operate at the ground level. So in many ways, I think, earlier studies like Sharachari, fraternal capital, where Gaunders, how some of those capital actually worked among the Gaunders, and Nadas was actually explained in Tamilnadu context. In terms of Barbara Harris White actually talks in terms of socially regulated economy, and Mike Savage actually talks in terms of the power of the past, how it determines the present. Okay, and in many ways, Harish Damodaran and other kind of studies also tell us that how some of these caste and class kind of dynamics actually operate in the these wealth accumulation kind of processes. So my urge to fellow sociologists and the younger colleagues is to also engage with some of these themes so that could actually throw light on the larger dimensions of inequality and injustice or discrimination that's going on. And let me stop here.
Thank you, Professor Purendra Prasad. You are highlighted about the various scenario, the political scenario, the wealth redistribution points, and highlighting about the Marxian and the variant perspective, and highlighting about the literature context and how the social networks, especially social political networks and diversification of the networks, and the inclusion exclusion perspectives, and the necessity of the social justice, the process, how to understand this kind of. And very interestingly, you highlighted about the sectorial wealth distribution, whether the production or production and the expansion of the wealth aspects, and the structural dimensions, and the methodological issues, quantitative, qualitative, triangular, and cases very specifically with various regions, not only Hyderabad and other cases also you have very interestingly highlighted, and the variables and the insights from the various projects, which are all highly useful for the present day scholars. And I'm sure your talk will enrich and certainly useful to the scholars. And I request Professor Sampathkumar, if at all any questions, we can make it accordingly, and I request Professor Sampathkumar to give formal vote of thanks afterwards.
May I come in for 2 minutes? Yeah, Professor Maruthakutti, I would like to just,
Please.
just,
Yes.
one of the things which I was very struck by Professor Purendra Prasad's talk, and the fact that he was addressing, bringing in the sociological perspective, particularly for many of us, we even in our tail end of our lives wonder what exactly is the sociological perspective. So I was very struck by the fact about how he distinguished the way economists study the wealthy and sociologists study the wealthy, the question of relational, dynamics between the wealthy and the non-wealthy, as well as the method. He kept talking about below the radar, the role of gossip or rumor. How do you study? For young PhD scholars, very often they are confronted in the field. How do you study? What kind of techniques do you adopt? So I think it has been very, very useful. I found a comment on the chat about why the focus on, Telangana or the Andhra region. And I think Professor Purendra's, I think that is also part of the sociological fieldwork. He was drawing from the research of that area. So when we speak in sociology, I think I just thought I'd respond to that. And thank you again very, very much, Professor Maruthakutti and Professor Purendra, before I hand it over back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions from the audience point of view or comments? I request Professor Sampathkumar to say a formal vote of thanks.
Good morning to one and all. It's really a great honor and to deliver a vote of thanks.
Hello, hi.
Yeah, yes, sir. Yeah,
sir, I had a question.
Someone have a question. Yes, sir. Please carry on.
Yeah, hello, hi. Good morning, everyone. Sir, I have a question. Most of your presentation focused on dimensions of wealth creation in southern India. I mean, could you give a sense of how such processes have unfolded in northern India, except for places like Delhi or Gurgaon? How do we account for more, how do we account for the regional disparities between different states, for example, Bihar, UP, etc., and states of eastern India like Odisha and Bengal, in terms of whether we have, in your study and projects, how do you see wealth creation processes in these places, and whether these places have wealthy individuals of the kind like we have in Andhra, Telangana, and places like that? And further, what perspective can we reach to in terms of its outcomes on both politics and economy of these locations? Because after all, Indian economy in terms of regional differences, it's disparate. Even on per capita income, if we compare, places like Tamilnadu, Goa, etc., can be compared with any European nation, while North Indian states can be compared with South African nations. So how does that picture fits in the wealth creation scene is what I was interested
in. I didn't get who is the who asked this question. Name?
Sir, it's me. My name is Uttam. I am
yes,
a previous.
Yes, Uttam. Yeah. All right. Can I respond or should I take more questions? Okay, maybe I'll start this question, and if there are more, we can take. Okay. Are there similar studies, in terms of North India, particularly Delhi, Gurgaon, Bihar, and other things? Yes, I think this, as part of this project that I have been talking about, we did study in 4 cities. Actually, this is one, Delhi, Kolkata, Bombay, and Hyderabad. So these the findings of these 4 studies are available online. They are also published by the Center for Inequality Studies in South Africa, so which is in the public domain. Okay, so the question about whether are there ways in which other regions also can be studied, and are there big elites like in Hyderabad, other places? It's largely Bombay which accounts for the large number of business elites and the ultra rich. Okay, so the historical account of the wealthy elites actually goes back to certain caste communities again in Bombay in terms of the Parsis and in terms of the the Marwadis and other regions, especially the combined state of Bombay and Gujarat. Okay, so historically, Sripad and others actually have traced the history of these wealth elites in Bombay to explain a larger processes actually that have impact in different sectors and domains. Okay. Second, about Delhi, Gurgaon, here again, I think the study that has been done on Delhi, what they have also done is to look at not simply about Delhi as a city, but as city region. And this is where, a lot of agrarian kind of capital and other kind of, capital from the rural industries and other places, how it has actually flowed. And, I think Rana Das Gupta's, account of Delhi is an excellent analysis. And that is supplemented by these wealth inequality studies that our project also has done. So, Uttam, I think you can also refer to some of these set of studies that are available. But is there a way that one could also look at and make certain concrete kind of investigations? I think you have today Hurun Rich List, which periodically is trying to publish the list of these rich individuals in each city across the country. And today, I think, these wealthy individuals as well as the business magazines actually are proud to announce. See, at some point in time, people used to hide wealth, to not display their wealth or not to disclose their kind of ranking. Today, I think it is other way around. People want to actually, display that who is actually among the top 100 and top whatever. So you have this Hurun Rich List, which every year it publishes. It also publishes sector-wise, and it does tell us about certain changes in terms of new faces, in terms of new sectors which have actually emerged as wealthy. Okay, and you can also trace the falling icons in different cities. Okay, so these are all available. And from there, if you actually move into their annual reports and Bombay Stock Exchange and other kind of documents, we will have a lot of that information based on which I think sociologists, we can actually pursue through what I said, case studies, or through some kind of leads. One could actually do fascinating kind of studies. Yeah, there's one more.
Good afternoon, Professor Prasad.
Yeah.
Myself, Madhuparna, I'm pursuing my PhD from IIT Kanpur, and I am also looking into business community of West Bengal, and I have also looked into wealth accumulation, and some of the findings that you have been discussing also resonate in my study. And my question to you was, since you spoke about methodology, I wanted to ask one question in that regard. What was your unit of analysis in these projects? Like, who did you interview, like, and the sampling? How did you go about? Secondly, you have spoken about gossips and rumor. So, in when you were collecting your data, how did you, go about verifying such data? Because there's a question of ethics as well. So, how did you, listen, like, how did you segregate the hearsays? Because everything that you hear is not true. So how did you bifurcate from maybe true to from true, and then, verify such kind of data? So I was very interested when you mentioned it as a part of your tool. If you can say something.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Madhuparna. I think what we did in our study was we, based on the available data sets, as I said, Hurun Rich List and Forbes India and other kind of data sources, we classified these, into those wealthy individuals, okay, in terms of 1,000 crores and above, 500 to 1,000 crores, and between 100 and 500 crores. Okay, so that's one classification that we did in order to identify how many of them actually fall beyond 1,000 crores, and what kind of data sets that are available, etc. And we were also conscious, saying that it's not simply about the 1,000 crores or 500 crores. It's quite possible that there are OBC and Dalit kind of entrepreneurs who may have emerged from, say, 1 crore to 50 crores or 100 crores, which itself is a huge mobility given their trajectories. So we also try to see some of that kind of, more specific kind of dimensions rather than simply rely on these classification. Okay, and once we have done that, of course, once we identify the names and sectors and which of these sectors are predominant in Hyderabad city region, for example, I think pharmaceutical sector, or in terms of real estate sector and service industry within what kind of sector. So once you do sectoral kind of a distribution, what we did was to, approach, some of the reliable kind of sources. For example, I think, you have the journalists, the Economic Times and the other kind of journals, which the daily and some of those where we try to, interview some of these journalists to get more information from them. From there, what we tried to do was create some kind of a LinkedIn, which I was not actually part of any of those social media things. Create LinkedIn, send, some of them actually a direct kind of communication. Out of, several kind of requests, couple of them agreed, and they also gave actually time to talk to us. Okay, so we were able to actually go talk to the primary wealth owners in their kind of home or office in the given time, and collect actually a lot of their personal kind of biography and their annual reports and their own kind of profiles that they publish. So from that, I think we also, what we try to do is your second question in terms of how do you verify this data? How do you veracity of this whole thing and ethics question? What we tried to do was, obviously we were very clear that whatever that we are trying to actually talk to was larger trends and tendencies and patterns. It's not that the estimation of wealth actually is accurate or we are anywhere near. We were absolutely conscious of the fact that we are only trying to track certain kind of larger kind of tendencies. Okay, so you do have, a lot of people around these set of these primary wealth owners who are accessible. So we need to identify those key respondents who have been, central at different points in time. There could be some binamis, although they may not admit that they are actually proxies or binamis, but through some of these journalist friends and key kind of activists in the city, you can identify. So we try to do those kind of things. And so when we actually tried to write the story, we actually explained a lot of processes that led to that wealth accumulation, rather than we were only harping on the final kind of estimations. Okay. And obviously, I think there are a lot of ethical questions that would emerge. Okay, what we tried to do was, we tried as much to actually share some of these things with the our key respondents and the key persons that are influential in the cities to actually look at the veracity of it and actually publish it in the public domain. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Prasad. Thank you for answering the question, because the topic itself is very not very discussed. It has received inadequate attention, as you know, in the within Indian sociology. So I'm thankful that you presented this, and it was a very interesting talk.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Professor Sampathkumar?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So, good afternoon, one and all. It's really an honor to propose a vote of thanks. And first of all, I'm thankful to Dr. Maruthakutti, sir, my mentor and teacher, for this wonderful opportunity to co-convene this online lecture series of RC05. And next, I thank Dr. Professor Maitri Chaudhary ma'am, President ISS, and for her commitment towards the dissemination of knowledge to everyone, and active participation of in welfare of discipline, sociology discipline. Ma'am, thank you so much, ma'am, for your esteemed presence and your brief presidential address. And I wholeheartedly thank Dr. Professor Purendra Prasad. Sir, your topic itself is so, I think, created a lot of curiosity among us. And why study wealth elites in India? We never thought in this direction, sir. I think the topic itself is so motivating to do a lot of research in this area. I think we never thought in this perspective at all, sir. And thank you so much for enlightening us with a lot of information with research inputs, particularly a few aspects which is very commonly discussion is happening in the modern time or current period is wealth redistribution. I think two different groups are coming up with the two different ideas about wealth redistribution. And even you said rightly that Human Development Index also projects that India is below 125. And even during pandemic also you said 100 million more added in under the poverty line. All that is really greater points to note as a researcher. And we need to do a lot of in-depth research on these areas to know more about it and report to the world. And particularly, you said wealth accumulation is not immoral if it happens within the legal way or in a proper way. That is really a very important point to note. And even you said that marriage becomes one of the medium way to multiple the wealth. So even this also, the marriage is also one of the way of networking. All that you said, sir. Really, it's really a great lecture you delivered. And thank you so much on behalf of RC. On behalf of Dr. Maruthakutti, sir, I wholeheartedly thank you, sir, for your esteemed presence and your wonderful presentation on why to study about the allied groups. Thank you so much, sir, for your presence. And I thank all the scholars and students who are really, taken time to participate in this online lecture. We are intended to organize more lecture like this by inviting renowned and stalwarts in the field of economy and society. And once again, I thank you all for your presence. Sir,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Purendra Prasad, and thank you, Professor Maitri Chaudhary, ma'am, for your valuable time you spend for enriching the audience. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
thank you, sir. Thank you all, sir. Thank you all. Thank you all.